What's up YouTube? Evan here with Cloud9 Aquariums, and today we're going to have a little chit chat about lights. Now the first thing you got to be thinking, especially if you're a beginner, is why do I really need lights? Most fish tanks will come with a pack set and have some standard either incandescent or fluorescent lights on top of it. You might think, oh, that's perfect, what do I need anything else for? It comes in a package kit, so they must know what they're talking about. Wrong. Now, will those do just for normal fish? Sure, I'm sure it'll look great, and you can, for a beginner, it's good enough. Another thing you might be questioning is, why do I even need lights? I'll just buy a tank, set it in front of a window, I'll be all set. That's why I'm here, okay? So let's get one thing straight. Don't use natural daylight. Okay, there's a couple things. One, you can't control it, so you can't control the amount of light it's getting, so whether or not the tank is getting enough, especially if you're going to be growing plants. Another thing you also can't control is the algae growth that it tends to produce, especially so if you're having an algae problem and you need to be able to control your lights. Well, you can't control your lights but daylight unless closing a curtain, but then you can't even see your fish. That's my other point too, is it doesn't penetrate the water good enough, and it does make your fish look great, and it's just not a good looking tank. So natural daylight is not a way to go, especially in the summer. That natural daylight can actually heat up your water in your tank, and then you're going to have a whole mess of problems too, because if your tank overheats, then you're going to have some fish dead, and it's just going to be a nightmare. So let's stay away from the windows for now, okay? One thing you got to question is whether or not you're looking to grow plants. Now this is kind of the major factor when you're looking for lights. If you're just going to get into something like cichlids or some other freshwater fish where you're going to have plastic plants in it, a watt per gallon isn't going to be something you're going to be concerned with, just because you're more looking for lights to accent your fish and to make their colors pop. But if you're looking to grow plants especially, something you're going to hear thrown around a lot, especially on the forums online, is watts per gallon. Now this is something that kind of been going back since from the day, and it's not really so much relevant anymore because of the different kind of lighting we have now. But it's still kind of a good, just basic thing to follow. Now, for like a heavy, high intensity light plant, you usually want somewhere between 3 to 5 watts per gallon. And what they're talking about is basically the overall wattage from your lights added together, and then per gallon meaning how many gallons you have in your tank. Pretty simple math. But again, it really kind of depends upon high light, low light for plants. So, what kind of lights are out there? This is something people are struggling with because there's so many different kinds. Especially for a beginner, you can really blow a lot of money on lights. This is one of the biggest ticket items. Especially if you're getting into plants lights, you need to know your lights. Really, you're not going to have any good growth. So the most expensive kind of lighting out there right now is metal halide. Metal halide you'll really see used mostly for salt water. It's really good for growing reef. But the problem with metal halide is it gets really hot, so you have to have cooling systems above your tank because otherwise it's going to start heating your water. Next major factor which keeps me away from it is the price. It's really expensive just to buy the units, and then the replacement bulbs are also extremely expensive, and they don't have a long life. So if it's something where freshwater especially, metal halide is just really not the way to go. The biggest item right now is T5s. Everybody's got to have T5s. And I'm going to be the first person, and I'm not really the first person, but I'm going to make it known I'm not about T5s, okay? I don't have any T5s, I don't run them, I think they're a waste of money, and I'll show you right now, there is a million things better than T5s. The reason people like T5, just really quickly, it's basically just, it's a high output fluorescent fixture, right? The bulbs are smaller, so you can pack a bunch of bulbs over, a smaller space, and so they can get their higher wattage per gallon basically, and they put out more watts, and they use less electricity. That's mostly why people like them. Got something in my eye today, but they're expensive. The units themselves, generally you're going to spend upwards of a couple $100s for a T5, a good T5 system. It's just really not worth it to me. Especially the lighting is it's expensive for the bulbs too, and it's just for bang for your buck. There's some new stuff out there where us aquarists are finding out works just as well, and it's not even comparable to price. The next big new thing is LEDs. But right now it's kind of in a test phase where it's coming out, but it's really expensive. Nobody's really sure about how long it's going to last and whether or not it's really doing that great for plants. So again, it's one of those things as a beginning hobbyist, it's not worth the money. Don't bother getting into it, especially if you're not sure if you're even going to stick with it. Save your money, spend it on cool stuff. Lighting doesn't need to get expensive. One of the things I really like, and I know some people think you're in the past if you're still using T8s, but I like T8s. T8, I'll show you right here. I got a little bulb. This is just an 18-inch, but you can see it's just a fluorescent tube, standard end. It's a little smaller than a T12, so you can actually pack a couple of these above. But they have a nice quality to them, and they're pretty cheap. T12s you really can't get enough of them above the tank to make a difference, but T8s they don't get too hot, and they put out a decent wattage. For this tank right here, I have 4 bulbs above it right now of T8s, and they're each putting out I believe 32 watts. So that's about 128 watts over a 40-gallon tank, which comes down to about little over 3 watts per gallon. And my entire light combo for this, which was all a DIY system, I think it cost me about $20 for each fixture. There's 2 fixtures above it, and then the bulbs are like $10 for 2. So I think I spent about $60 on just the lighting alone, and I can just give you a little shot. But it's basically just just 2 shop lights above this as fixtures. So if you just go to your Home Depot, and you can just buy a generic 2 T8 bulb shop light that you'd hang over a bench, something like that. I just get the black ones and I coat the inside with like a silver tape you can find in like the ductwork for AC, and the HVACs. And so I just coat that in there, and it makes it even more chrome, and I get a lot more light penetration. So that's really what I like to use above this tank. You can see on my other tank over here, I'm running something new. Okay, now this is something that some people are going to laugh about because they think this is kind of a ghetto job, and there's no way this is working for a DIY system. But I kid you not. Okay, CFL bulbs. This is the future, people. This is the future. Okay, this is the cheapest method we got right now. I'm talking, it's like $15 for 3 of these. And those fixtures, I got them from Walmart. I believe they were $5 a piece. So I think I spent, basically $30 on that entire tank, and I'm pushing, I think, 2.5 watts, 3 watts a gallon on it. Which again, and I'm growing baby's tears, and a Madagascar lace in there, and some dwarf sedge. And we'll get into plant species later on in my videos, but if you look them up, they tend, especially the baby tears, really does need a higher light. So if it's able to grow that, and it's thriving. So if it's able to grow that, this is pretty exciting because it's nice and cheap, and it's just doing a great job. This is kind of one of those little experiments I tried out. People had talked about it in the forums maybe being an option, and it's working great. Biggest thing about that though is you want to have a good placement. As you can see, let's turn over here for a second and talk about it. As you can see, I only got them placed a couple inches above the water. You don't want to put them up. You don't want to put them up too high, because if you put them up too high, then it's just really not going to be able to penetrate the water. It's just not going to get down to the bottom. But again, you don't want to put it too low, because A, you're going to have way too much water splashing in there, and you don't want to have electrical surges and shorts and sparks flying everywhere. It's just that's not going to be fun. Especially if you fry all your fish, it's just, nobody wants their fish fried, unless it's a Friday. But seriously, in all seriousness, don't screw around with electrical and water. You got to be careful about it. So leave a little bit of a gap, but especially make sure there's room for you to work in your tank. I like those, there's just clip-ons, and so I can just move them out of the way whenever I need to get in the tank, and it's just real simple to work on. Again, it's just making my life easier, making it so that I really actually enjoy working in my fish tanks. If I have to move 5 million things to get in a tank, you're not going to take care of your fish because you don't want to. It's not worth it. So that's kind of what I feel about optimal placement above the tank. The biggest thing you got to worry about too is, once you figure out your lighting system and what kind of bulbs you're going to use, is the temperature of the bulb. Especially if you're growing plants, you want to stick around the 6500K range. And what that's talking about is the kelvins and the wavelength. And I'm not going to get all scientific about this. There's plenty of stuff online. Everybody has Google nowadays. I'm sure you can figure it out. But basically, that's the range where the plants will be able to absorb the most light and use it the most. If you put just like a soft white light on it, you're not going to have great growth. Or if you put something up way too high, you're going to get terrible algae. So you really want to stick in about the 65K range. That's where I have the most success, and that's what everybody else is having the most success. So I believe that people who have been doing this for years and years and years, they're not lying. Because here's proof. One of the big things about lights too that some people are kind of too lazy to get, and I feel like it's one thing you really need to spend your money on, is a timer. Okay, it's like $5. Why would you not have a timer? It's so simple. You just buy, it doesn't even have to be expensive. Just buy a cheap timer, get a little surge protector, plug all your lights into it, plug it into the timer. Set the timer for about 8 to 12 hours a day. Done. Walk away. This way, every single time you wake up, you don't have to worry about, oh, I didn't turn my fish tank on today, or whatever, because, first off, your plants need the light, okay? If they don't have a regular schedule, it's just not going to grow as well. Second thing is, it's not good for your fish to have just like a strange schedule. We like to have a normal schedule, so do your fish. They like to have day and night. They're animals too. They have these cycles. Now, one thing you can do with timers too, which is great, is if you're noticing a lot of algae growth, or your plants are growing too fast for you to handle, seriously, turn your timer down. You don't have to go you don't even have to go 8 hours. So I've known people who will put it down to 6 hours or 4 hours even, just to kind of limit that algae growth. And set your timer to a schedule that's good for you, because you want to be able to enjoy your fish. So don't set it to be on the natural daylight cycle where you're not home because you're at work. I like to set mine to go on at like 11 in the morning, and then it goes off at 8:30 at night. And that works out great for me, because by the time I'm out, I don't have time to look at my fish in the morning anyways. It's just a distraction. So leave it off, and that way it turns on while I'm at work. I come home, then I have a couple hours to enjoy them, feed them, and then they go to bed before I go to bed. So I'm not sitting there blinded by my tank all night either. So just a couple dollars, and it saves you so much hassle. So I hope this really taught you a little something about lights, and what to consider and what not to consider. But feel free to leave your questions, comments, or any kind of suggestions you have below. If you haven't already, subscribe, okay? Because this is gonna be a fun trip. All right. So I hope this episode brings you and your fish just a little bit closer to Cloud 9.